Hello, I'm Zunko, also known as History Big Sis.
Hi, I'm Zundamon, the fairy.
Zundamon, do you know what Ashigaru are?
I think it means foot soldiers from the Heian to Edo period, right?
That's right, Ashigaru are lightly armed fighters. Compared to the brave samurai in fine armor and carrying swords, the Ashigaru are low-ranking, unnoticeable, and minor characters of Japanese history. On the battlefield, they were a miserable, expendable force.
Is that so?
They may not be mentioned very often, so you may not have the chance to know about them.
I wonder what role they played on the battlefield. I am curious.
Well, today, I will explain the history of Ashigaru, their role on the battlefield, their food, and their miserable reality.
Please take your time.
What is Ashigaru? First of all, let me explain what Ashigaru are. The most important characteristic of Ashigaru is that they are lightly armed. Armor and helmets like those worn by samurai were expensive and difficult to obtain for them. Low-ranked Ashigaru could only wear cheap, poor-quality armor or partial equipment.
Indeed, as you say, the higher-ranked people are more likely to wear full-body armor. The military commander Naoi Kanetsugu even put the character for love on his helmet, which means devotion to one's lord.
It is said that the reason samurai wear luxuriously decorated equipment with gold leaf and lacquer is so that they will look respectable even if they die in battle. Ashigaru did not have the financial resources to do so, so they were forced to wear light equipment. Another characteristic of the Ashigaru is that they were not formal warriors. They were not part of the regular army, but rather mercenaries who were hired on a temporary basis as needed.
So they were called up when there was a shortage of men?
Yes, that's right, although they are often thought of as just a way to make up numbers. It is said that the role played by the Ashigaru and their impact on history was quite significant. Especially around the time of the Onin War. They played such an active role that it is no exaggeration to say that they played a leading role on the battlefield.
Wow, it's amazing that they played such a major role even though they were lowly foot soldiers. I'd like to hear more about it.
It is wrong to say that Ashigaru are farmers. What kind of life do you imagine for Ashigaru?
Well, they are usually farmers, and only go to war when they are not busy farming, right?
Actually, that is not true.
Is that so?
Famous warlords like Uesugi Kenshin, Mori Motonari, and Takeda Shingen all went to battle during the busy farming season. The Battle of Okehazama took place during rice planting season, and the Fourth Battle of Kawanakajima and the Battle of Itsukashima took place in autumn, just before the harvest.
How could they mobilize so many farmers during the busiest farming season?
In fact, agricultural workers in the Warring States period were divided into two main groups: peasants and people who primarily serve in the military. The word peasants does not mean farmers who owned and cultivated their own fields. Farmers owned large tracts of land, and the majority of the peasants were servants who were engaged in farming under the farmers. They are what we call peasants. In the Warring States period, when warfare was the order of the day, the farmers who manages peasants would request to be exempted from conscription in exchange for paying a larger nangu, annual tribute.
What is nangu?
Farmers in those days paid their taxes to lords in rice. Nangu means annual tax.
I see.
On the other hand, the farmers who manages the military service would request a reduction in annual tribute in exchange for sending out more foot soldiers. Thus, within the farmers, there were those who devoted themselves to agriculture and those who devoted themselves to warfare. This was a good thing for the warring feudal lords. They could fulfill the wishes of both companies and secure both tax revenues and soldiers. By the way, it is commonly believed that many of the second and third sons of peasants became warriors because they could not inherit the land, but this is also very wrong.
In the first place, servants have no land to inherit.
Moreover, the concept of protecting their own house was not very important. Therefore, even the eldest son would go to the battlefield to fight. The reason why battles were fought even during the busy farming season was because it was possible to mobilize people in military service. The miserable life of Ashigaru on the battlefield. When a battle was fought, farmers would go into battle with his own peasants. Peasants were the main actors in the battle, the so-called Ashigaru. Let me tell you about the life of Ashigaru on the battlefield. Ashigaru brought with them daily necessities such as clothes, swords, spears, and straw-braided mats for sleeping on. Farmers and peasants at that time carried swords in their daily lives, and their belongings were checked before they went into battle. If their swords were rusty, they were severely warned and made to polish them on the spot.
Since swords were important tools used in battle, the checks were very strict.
Some peasants had their own armors, but most of them were lent to them.
Wow, was food also provided?
Before going into battle, the foot soldiers prepared 3 days' worth of rations on their own. The most of the rations were dried rice made from steamed rice, dried plums, dried miso, fermented soybeans, and other highly preservable food. It is said that rations were supplied to the soldiers from the 4th day of the march.
I see. It is impossible to carry food for more than 3 days by oneself.
Of course, they had to travel on foot to the battlefield, but sometimes they had to cross steep mountains. After walking along the mountain path for a long time, they would gradually become hypoglycemic and unable to move. Those who could not move had to be left behind. It is said that many of the foot soldiers who lost their lives in this way lay in a heap on the trail where the army had marched.
For the foot soldiers, just moving from one place to another was a risk to their lives.
Furthermore, starvation was a daily occurrence on the battlefield. Even if rations were provided, it was not a sure thing, and supply was often cut off depending on the battlefield conditions. That is why the foot soldiers were required to have severe survival skills.
What methods did they use to survive hunger?
A manual book for foot soldiers written in the Edo period, Zouwu Hyo Wu Monogatari, Tales of the Foot Soldiers, describes it as follows. When you enter enemy territory, pick up anything you can find. Even if it is the bark of a pine tree, you can eat it as porridge after exposing it to water. When crossing a river or in heavy rain, paddy rice in a sack of provisions tied around your neck will sprout with water. You should then eat them along with the leaves and roots.
So the foot soldiers stave off hunger with all wisdom.
What was more difficult than finding food, however, was securing water. Because the water supply changed as they move across the land, there were many who developed diarrhea on the battlefield. Also, wells in enemy territory were filled with poison and horse manure, so it was not easy to drink.
It would be good if there was a river nearby, but what would they do if there was not even a river?
The only way was to store rainwater or filter water from puddles. They used to filter muddy water with a cloth and drink only the clear water.
I wouldn't want to drink muddy water, even if it was for survival.
There is still misery to be had. That is getting wounded on the battlefield.
Could it be that there were no doctors?
The army was accompanied by a doctor called a kinsoi, but only senior warriors were treated. Even if a foot soldier was injured, they ignored it.
What? Then what did they do when an Ashigaru was injured?
Dubious folk remedies were common.
Folk remedies?
It is said that urine was applied to sword wounds, and drinking horse manure dissolved in water for internal bleeding.
That's not a cure at all.
When an arrow pierced a man, his companions pulled it out with force.
That's beyond reckless.
Besides, there was the risk of tetanus, infection, and other malignant diseases. Still, they were considered the best treatments at the time. So, today, I spoke about the mobilization of Ashigaru and their realities on the battlefield. This story is quite long, so we'll stop here for now. To be continued in the second half. The next topic will be the promotion of Ashigaru, their rewards, and how they were treated when they became samurai during the Edo period. If you have any thoughts, please let me know in the comment section.
Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, make sure to subscribe for more.
Please hit the like button. See you soon.